The Bible talks about races. It talks about athletes. It talks about crowns, discipline, competition, winning and losing. This isn't vague metaphor. It's a direct reference to real sporting events that drew massive crowds in the ancient world, events just as grand as any modern World Cup in terms of culture and passion. And there's one detail almost nobody knows. The Apostle Paul lived right next to one of these events. He knew the athletes, knew the rules, knew the price of victory. And he decided to use all of it to talk about something eternal. What he saw in those games will surprise you. Corinth, 1st century after Christ. Picture a loud cosmopolitan city packed with sailors, merchants, philosophers, and soldiers. A city where almost anything went, and money changed hands fast. A city that never slept, where the port ran day and night, where different languages mixed on narrow streets, and where the cultural diversity was so intense it was almost overwhelming. That's where the Apostle Paul spent 18 months of his life, preaching, writing, and watching the world around him. The book of Acts records that stay in detail. Paul didn't lock himself in a room. He worked as a tent maker during the day and preached in synagogues and homes at night. He was completely immersed in the life of that city. And what was Corinth most famous for, besides its busy port? The Isthmian Games. Every 2 years, the city of Corinth hosted one of the greatest sporting events of the ancient world. According to classical historians, the Isthmian Games ranked among the 4 major athletic festivals of ancient Greece, alongside the Olympic Games, the Pythian Games, and the Nemean Games. These were massive events. Athletes came from across the entire Mediterranean to compete, and the crowds that gathered transformed the whole region. Think about the impact a World Cup has on a host city. Traffic changes, commerce explodes, hotels fill up. The entire city breathes that event for weeks. The Isthmian Games had exactly that effect on Corinth and the surrounding cities. The competitions were varied and impressive. Foot races at different distances, races in full armor, where athletes carried shield and helmet while running at high speed. Wrestling, boxing, which in the ancient world was far more brutal than any modern version, with no rounds, no weight categories, no time limit. Pentathlon, combining running, jumping, discus throwing, javelin throwing, and wrestling, chariot races that packed the stands with tension, and music and poetry competitions that drew the intellectuals of the age. It was a complete festival, an entire week of competition that brought normal life in the region to a standstill and gathered people from completely different cultures around the same spectacle. Paul was in Corinth during one of the periods when these games were held. Scholars, including researchers from the Biblical Archaeology Society, indicate that Paul's stay in Corinth coincided with the Isthmian Games of the year 51 after Christ. Paul wasn't a man who lived cut off from the world. He walked the same streets as the athletes. He watched the crowds gather days before the competitions. He observed coaches supervising athletes in the warm-up areas. He knew the preparation rituals, the physical sacrifice, the brutal discipline these competitors imposed on themselves months before the games. And there was something in those athletes that left a deep mark on him. Because when Paul wrote to the Christians in Corinth, he didn't use the language of the temple or the synagogue to explain the life of faith. He used the language of the stadium. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 through 27, Paul wrote something every Corinthian of his day would have understood immediately. He asked, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable crown, but we, an imperishable one, a perishable crown." Paul was talking about something concrete. The crown awarded to winners of the Isthmian Games wasn't made of gold. It wasn't made of silver. It was woven from wild celery or pine branches. It was beautiful in the moment of victory, but wilted within days. The athlete who had spent years training, sacrificing, and suffering, who had crossed the Mediterranean to compete, received as his ultimate prize something that disappeared in less than a week. Paul saw this and found it staggering, not because the effort was worthless, quite the opposite. What impressed Paul was precisely the intensity of the dedication in the face of such a fleeting prize. These athletes gave up everything for a crown that didn't even last. They slept little. They ate with strict discipline. They trained under extreme conditions. They didn't complain. They didn't give in. They didn't look for shortcuts. But the final prize was temporary. And then Paul asks the question that changes everything. If these men sacrificed so much for something that fades, what should someone do who is running for something eternal? But Paul didn't stop there. He went deeper. And what he wrote next reveals that he wasn't simply using sport as rhetorical decoration. He understood the rules. He knew how competition worked from the inside. In that same passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, Paul says he does not run aimlessly and does not box as one beating the air. That phrase is too precise to be accidental. In ancient boxing, there was a technique known as shadow boxing, where the athlete threw punches at empty air to develop speed and coordination. It was standard training that any spectator of the time would have recognized immediately. Paul knew this, and he used it as the image of the exact opposite of what he wanted to describe. He didn't want to run without direction. He didn't want to fight against nothing. He wanted every movement to have real purpose. But there's another historical detail that almost no one knows, and it makes everything even more fascinating. To compete in the Great Greek Games, an athlete had to meet a strict requirement. He had to prove he had trained for at least 10 consecutive months under the supervision of an official trainer. Showing up on competition day wasn't enough. Natural talent wasn't enough. A long period of disciplined, documented preparation had to be verified. If an athlete was found cheating on the training requirements, he was disqualified. Publicly. With shame in front of the entire crowd. Paul knew this too. In his letter to Timothy, in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5, he wrote, "An athlete is not crowned unless he competes according to the rules, with the required preparation, with integrity at every stage of the process, not just in the moment of competition." It wasn't just about effort, it was about character. And Paul went even further when he wrote the letter to the Hebrews. In chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, he created one of the most powerful images in the entire Bible. He said, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith." So great a cloud of witnesses. Paul was describing the stands of a stadium, packed, loud, with every eye fixed on the track. Anyone who has ever walked into a packed stadium knows exactly what that image means. There is a different weight to running when the stands are full. There is an energy that pushes the athlete beyond their own limits. Paul used that image to talk about something that goes far beyond sport. He said there was a cloud of witnesses watching. Everyone who came before, everyone who ran the same race in other eras and made it to the finish line. And at the center of that image, he placed Jesus as the ultimate example of someone who ran to the end without quitting, even when the cost was absolute. And there's still another dimension that Paul explored often. The idea of a team. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul describes the Christian community using the image of the human body. Each part has a different function. The foot is not the hand. The eye is not the ear. But all are necessary for the body to work. No part can say it doesn't need the others. And when one part suffers, the whole body suffers together. Any football fan understands this instinctively. A team of 11 individual stars playing only for themselves loses to an average team that plays together with purpose. The World Cup is full of examples like that. Teams without superstars that went far because they played as one body. Paul knew this 2,000 years before football was invented. And there was one more element that Paul noticed in the games and that struck him deeply. Total commitment with no guarantee of victory. In the stadium, only one person won. The others ran with the same dedication and went home without the crown. Paul didn't ignore that. He understood that the value of the effort didn't depend exclusively on the final result. It depended on how you ran. It depended on whether you competed according to the rules. It depended on whether you kept your eyes on the right goal throughout the entire race. That completely changes the way you face defeat. What Paul discovered about victory and defeat will change the way you see any competition. Now, for the most surprising revelation of all. Paul didn't just use sport as a metaphor. He revealed something about the nature of the prize that completely inverts the logic of modern competition. Think about the highest moment of a World Cup. The captain of the winning team lifts the trophy. Confetti falls. The music plays. Players cry. Fans in the stands embrace strangers. It's one of the most emotionally charged moments human sport can produce. The entire world stops to watch that instant. And then, 4 years later, it all starts again. The trophy sits in a display case. The players get older. Some retire. The team that won has to prove everything all over again in the next edition. The victory was real, earned with blood and sweat. But it isn't permanent. It isn't the final destination. It's just a milestone in a journey that keeps going. The trophy doesn't change the world. The crown, as Paul said, perishes. Not because the victory is without value, but because no human victory is the final destination. Every human achievement points beyond itself. Paul understood this in a way that goes far beyond sports philosophy. In Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 and 14, he wrote one of the most well-known lines in all his letters. "One thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." Forgetting what lies behind. That's extraordinary. Paul wasn't saying the past doesn't matter. He was saying the past cannot paralyze. An athlete who lost the last race can't stand still staring at the defeat. He has to train for the next one. A player who missed the decisive penalty can't spend the rest of his career replaying that moment. He has to get back up, return to the training field, and keep going. But Paul was talking about something far greater than any championship. He was talking about people who carried the weight of past defeats, mistakes they couldn't forget, shame they couldn't let go of, failures that seemed to define who they were. And he said, that is not what defines the race. What defines the race is where you are looking right now. And there's one final historical detail that brings everything together in a remarkable way. The Isthmian Games were held at the sanctuary of Poseidon near Corinth. There was a deep religious dimension to those games. Athletes competed before the gods. They made offerings before their events. Victory was considered an honor, not just personal, but sacred, a blessing from the gods upon the winner. Paul subverted that completely. He said there was a fundamental difference between running before gods who didn't exist to receive a crown of leaves that wilted in days, and living with purpose before the living God for something that never fades with time. The question wasn't whether you were an athlete or not. The question wasn't whether you watched the World Cup or not. The question was who you were running for, and why, and whether the prize you were chasing was truly worth the sacrifice you were making to reach it. Anyone who has ever watched a World Cup knows there is something in human competition that goes beyond the scoreboard. There is dedication that has no rational explanation. There is sacrifice that goes beyond what any salary would justify. There is the pursuit of something greater than yourself. There is the moment when everything tells you to stop, and you decide to keep going anyway. Paul saw that in the athletes of his time. He recognized that fire, that determination, that courage to never quit even when the body is asking for rest. And he said that same energy was made to be directed toward something that lasts forever, that there is a race worth more than any World Cup, that there is a prize that doesn't wilt, doesn't age, doesn't sit in a display case waiting for the next edition, and that anyone, athlete or not, can enter that race. The Bible doesn't talk about the World Cup, but it talks about something at the heart of every human competition, the search for a prize worth the sacrifice. Paul didn't look down on sport. He respected it enough to use it as a mirror of something eternal. He saw in the athletes of Corinth the same desire that exists in every human being, the will to run with purpose, to compete with integrity, to reach the finish line without quitting halfway through. And the challenge he leaves behind isn't only for athletes. It isn't only for fans. It's for anyone who wakes up every day and decides to give their best for something they believe in. You are running. The question is, which prize are you running toward? Write it in the comments. What is the prize you are chasing right now in your life? It can be spiritual, professional, family-related, personal. I want to read every single answer. And if this kind of content makes you see the Bible in a different way, subscribe to the channel. There is a lot more coming.